I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't even know what I'm doing, what I'm thinking. I'm here to do an unhaul of some of my sci-fi / fantasy books. I don't know how this is gonna go. I feel like as this series is going on, I keep saying like, well, I'm gonna keep a lot of these, but I am planning on keeping quite a few of these. I don't read a lot of sci-fi fantasy to the point that they are all on one shelf together, one of these little shelves together. That said, I do want to read more. There are a couple of genres that I am actually quite interested in reading more. So we shall see what stays and what goes. But the whole idea of this series of unhauls is essentially I have 3 categories. One is books on my TBR that I place on my TBR often, books on my TBR that I sometimes think about putting on my TBR, and then books that I just never think about putting on my TBR, and those are the ones that should go. So now I've got quite a few here that I have already read that I have really, really loved, and I'll kind of decide as I go what will stay and what will go. The first is The Martian by Andy Weir. I really loved this book so much, and I want to keep it. Oh my goodness, I will never get rid of The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I adored this book. It means so much to me, so I'm going to keep that. Next is Never Let Me Go. I, again, really, really loved this book. I thought it was beautifully written, very eerie, very strange. The Lord of the Rings. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine getting rid of this book. I absolutely enjoyed reading this series so much. That copy is not looking its best, though. Wow. That's okay. Mr. Penumbra's 24-hour bookstore. I've heard good things about this, and I do sometimes think about putting this on my shelves, especially when I think about reading books about books. It's just kind of curious. The Humans by Matt Haig. I've heard such hilarious things about this book, and I do sometimes think about reading it. The Hobbit. Beautiful, beautiful book. I really want to keep this. I might want to read that to Nora one day. Okay. Fatherland by Robert Harris. I think I'm going to give this book up. I don't think I desperately need this book on my shelves, and it never really lands on a TBR. Next is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I really enjoyed reading this book so much, so I'm going to keep that. The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. I enjoyed this. I kind of feel mixed things about it. I think I gave it 4 stars, where I enjoyed it. However, I feel like The Handmaid's Tale could have completely stood on its own, and I'm not desperate to keep this on my shelf, so I'm going to actually pass that along. The Book of Strange New Things by Michelle Faber. I've got one other book by him on my shelves. I am quite curious about this. This is like a space exploration book, and Jen Campbell really adores this author, so I'm going to keep it. I sometimes think about putting this on my TBR. The Name of the Wind. This is one of those things where I literally don't, if I had a limbo pile for this round, this would land on the limbo pile, because I did try to read this a while ago, but then I had a miscarriage, and for some reason now I associate this book with that miscarriage. However, a lot of people adore this book. I do think I should give it another try. I sometimes think about putting it on a TBR. The Buried Giant is a book that I am quite curious about. I know it has mixed reviews for sure, but I am curious, so I think I'm going to keep that one. I do sometimes think about putting that on my TBR. Oh, here's another, this is a book that often goes on my TBR. Every single Christmas, I think about reading this because it's a retelling of the Nutcracker, which is like my favorite holiday ballet, and that, yeah, that's 100% staying. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I've heard amazing things about. This has been on several TBRs, so that should definitely stay. Kindred by Octavia Butler. I will not get rid of this. I have been so eager to read this. That is 100% staying. The Unseen World by Liz Moore. Now, I just recently read Long Bright River by Liz Moore, and I really enjoyed it. This is a very different vibe. I think it's got more of a sci-fi element to it, and I am very curious about it, and that sometimes goes on my TBR. Recursion by Blake Crouch. Now, I did not enjoy Dark Matter at all by Blake Crouch, but I do have high hopes for Recursion. I sometimes think about putting this on my TBR. We shall see. Vox is another one that I sometimes think about putting on my TBR. Actually, it's more often than sometimes because it feels like a bit of a Handmaid's Tale retelling about women's rights in a dystopian world. Red Rising is a book that I often think about putting on my TBR, and I just haven't read it yet, but I really have heard amazing things. Oh man. Fahrenheit 451 is another book that I often think about putting on my TBR, so that will stay. Oh gosh, I'm just keeping everything on a tie. The Power by Naomi Alderman is another one that I think about a lot. Again, has a bit of a Handmaid's Tale dystopian vibe to it, so that's staying. Oh look, Margaret Atwood blurbs it. I mean, that's a good sign. Next is Artemis, also by Andy Weir. I loved the writing of The Martian so much, and I felt so connected to Mark. And I must say, I don't like heist stories, like in movies, in books. This is a heist story, but I think that I'll care so much about the character that I'll enjoy it. So I'm going to keep this. I sometimes think about putting that on my TBR. Here's the book that I think about all the time. Old Man's War. It just sounds so interesting. It's like a classic sci-fi story that I definitely want to keep and think about often. Oh my gosh, this book. How have I not read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes yet? I don't know. This is a prequel to the Hunger Games series, and I really want to read it, so that's absolutely going to stay. Oh, Barry got this for me, which was so sweet of him. The Handmaid's Tale, a graphic novel. 100% staying. This actually often goes on my TBRs because, especially for readathons, I know that I'd be able to like zoom through this really quickly. I mean, I love the story of The Handmaid's Tale. Ooh, and this is the second in the Scythe series, Thunderhead. I really want to read this, and I often think about putting this on my TBR. So I'm not getting rid of too much. I'm getting rid of The Testaments by Margaret Atwood just because I felt okay about it. I enjoyed it, but it's not like The Handmaid's Tale just stands up, and it wasn't everything to me that I hoped it would be. Fatherland is another book that I'm going to get rid of, and I'm keeping the rest. Is anyone surprised? No. But to be fair to me, I have not a lot of books for sci-fi and fantasy, and it is a couple of genres that I really don't read a lot of that I would like to read more of. So I'm not going to be too hard on myself on this one. Let me know in the comments below. Have you read any of the books that I kept, and what did you think about them? I'm very curious. And I will talk with you guys soon. Bye, everyone.